boom, landed on my head, knocked myself out immediately. And I found myself it in a completely different space than human moving through life space. And in this, it was an inner space, totally quiet, completely quiet in a way that is so perfect. And it's a peacefulness that I've come to know very well now and love being in. And in that peacefulness, in that moment, I thought, where am I? And I could look around, of course, without my eyes, with my inner soul. I was looking around thinking, where am I? And then it was a feeling of, oh, I'm here. Feeling of knowing where I was back in and who and what I was in touch with. In that quietness, I just was there and enjoying it, letting go of the confusion of where am I? And suddenly it was just like the air coming out of a balloon. I just went.
My guest today is Jan Christenson, who had a near-death experience when she landed on her head after slipping on the ice. But one of the things I'm really excited about is she's going to share some techniques that she has learned about energy that will help you to find your bliss. So Jan, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really pleased to be here.
Oh, good. Me too. Me too. So why don't we go ahead and start with, will you just tell us a little bit about what your life was like before you had your NDE?
Sure. I was spiritual when I came into this world. I had experiences that were that came from a high frequency, I think is the best way I can describe it, and the way that makes the most sense to me. So as a child, I had things that unfolded that were really amazing. And I had things in my life that happened that were really horrible too. So there was really the contrast of the negative and the positive. And the negative one, I have to say. And what I mean by that is I lost my touch with the spiritual side of things and I became human. I forgot completely that I was a spirit having a human experience and I became human and life was very painful. So I became more human and more human. And I I had a family and I had some wonderful things happen. I have two children that I just adore, and they're adults now. I have two grandchildren. And even though I had become so much of a human being, I still had a lot of really good things that happened in my life. And so the spiritual side of me was still there. I just didn't know too much about it. So it was still there and it was unfolding and it was happening, but it was pretty much unbeknownst to me. And I think the best way to describe it would be like this. When we are in a negative frame of mind, we attract negative energy and more negative things happen to us. So that was what happened in my life. I had a lot of negative things. And so I don't blame myself. And I'm getting to a point where I don't even blame the other people for the things that occurred in my life because um, it's fine now. And it's all mostly stories now. And I can live with it and move on. But to come out of that experience of living as a human and to be back in touch with myself spiritually is amazing. It's been worth every difficult weave and curve in the road that I had to take to bring myself back, navigating as me is the best way to put it.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I think that's a great transition to start with what happened in your near-death experience.
yeah, because that's really what brought me back to spirituality was the near-death experience. An opportunity to go, hey, I think I know a lot more than I knew I knew. And what I mean by that is that spiritually, we have so much wisdom inside that we can learn to tap into, that we can grow from. And so the near death experience, I'll just briefly explain what happened. Um, I was at work and I was in my usual frame of mind, a little frantic, rushing from one experience to another, from one location to another, doing my job. And I actually, on my way into the building, I slipped and I thought, "Ah, I'll have to remember that there's ice there when I come out." No, I was way too lost in my thinking to remember that. And so I came out moving too fast, slipped on the ice that I had recognized when I went in, but forgot when I came out. The thinking was going on. And when I slipped, I really tried to catch myself because my thinking was that, oh, if I fall on my back, I'll hurt myself. So, in trying to catch myself, I kept trying to get my foot back to the concrete sidewalk, off of the ice and onto the concrete sidewalk. And I just got myself wound up. And in some weird fashion, I my feet shot up in the air and I came straight down. And I was high enough in the air that I had time for thoughts to occur. I looked up and thought, oh, the sky's up there. That's not a good thing. And I then, boom, landed on my head, knocked myself out immediately. And I found myself it, in a completely different space than human moving through life space. And in this, it was an inner space, totally quiet, completely quiet in a way that is so perfect. Um, and it's a peacefulness that I've come to know very well now and love being in. And in that peacefulness, in that moment, I thought, where am I? And could look around, of course, without my eyes, with my inner soul. I was looking around thinking, where am I? And then it was a feeling of, oh, I'm here. Feeling of knowing where I was back in and who and what I was in touch with. And so in that quietness, I just was there and enjoying it, letting go of the confusion of where am I? And suddenly it was just like the air coming out of a balloon. I just went, and what I can see now, looking back at that, was my spirit leaving my body and feeling you're feeling the experience of it, like coming out of air coming out of a balloon. Um, you can imagine how expansive that is because the air comes out and it just moves in every direction. And it all unfolded what seemed to me fairly quickly. Um, it was as though I rose very high and everything just unfolded as I allowed it to and was just kind of amazed by what was happening. I had nothing in the line of a life review, nothing like that. I just went poof to floating in a perfect, it was like floating in a perfect soft cloud, just there. And from there, I had another expansion. I just went out in every direction. I could feel my energy just again go poof. And I could feel the centerness of where I was, and I could recognize the expansion of everything that I was. So it was kind of like becoming a oneness with everything. And the feeling was so exquisitely perfect that my thought was I could just stay here ever and never need anything else. And to feel that way is extraordinary, because here as humans, we have so much that we need just to stay alive. Up there, out there, in experiencing myself as my essence, my soul was just amazing. And it's not totally foreign to me back here because the essence is the same, which is interesting. How I felt out there is how I feel here, just in a much smaller way most of the time. But in learning and understanding, I can bring more of that feeling to me more and more, which was my hope. I thought, oh, okay, I'm back here. And I know that out there was so wonderful, but here I feel the same. I bet you I can feel more of what I felt out there while I'm here. And that is the experience I have. I've been on a tremendous learning curve since that happened because I just want to understand everything, which we never will. But anyway, back to being out there and floating in the bliss, in the perfection. I just was enjoying the experience and knew that I could stay there forever when suddenly the thought came of, what about your daughters? And as I had that thought, I could also see in the distance very bright white light coming towards me, and it seemed to be coming fairly quickly. And I felt a slight need to decide. It really was no decision. As soon as I had that thought, I thought, yeah, my daughters still need me. And with that, I knew that it wasn't time to stay there. And so that was the decision I made. Yeah, I have to go back. There's more to do. And with that thought, it was the total and complete being pulled right back down into my body. I could feel the denseness of being back in and being fit into this space that we call the body, back inside. And then from there, it went fairly quickly. Instead of being in a space that was fairly dark, still being able to see, suddenly I could recognize my eyelids were letting in a lot of light. I opened my eyes and I was back here in the form with my formlessness inside me. And
Wow.
yeah,
That's pretty amazing. So I have a couple
well,
of questions. Go ahead.
it seems very simple to me and it's very short. And I every time I talk about it, I think, well, that wasn't much. I know it's amazing, but it's short and sweet. Yeah.
I think what's amazing about it is what we're going to talk about what it changed in you afterwards or what it reconnected in you from your childhood. But I have two questions about your near death experience. So, number one, so you are slipping on the ice and you have that conscious feeling that the sky is above you and you know you're going to fall. Did you actually feel that impact or were you out of your body before that happened?
Well, I recall feeling my head connect with the ground, and then I I don't remember feeling anything. It was like feelings were gone. Um, yeah, like I don't even remember my back coming down and landing on the ground. So it was both unconscious.
The reason I wanted to ask you that is I've, talked to a lot of people who've had near death experiences, and it seems very common that before they get to I mean, people are always afraid of death because it's not necessarily if we believe that we go on as energy and we become our higher selves or our souls again. I don't think people are afraid of that as much as they are the pain and what they might endure. And it seems like a lot of people have near death experiences leave their body before an impact. So in your case, the impact with the ice in the head hitting the ground and not feeling that, or an impact of a car crash or a motorcycle accident, or lots of different experiences. So I think that that's really something I want people to hear is that you know when you are leaving your body, you usually do it at the moment before you would have all of those pain that we would be afraid of from a human standpoint.
Yeah, it's very true. And I have heard some really interesting stories too about people who have been beaten and in the course of the beating,
Yeah.
the blood started to feel absolutely wonderful. They became ecstatic. Hit me again. And this for people is hard to understand too. But the things that we're capable of are so far beyond our comprehension.
Yeah.
that we kind of just go, what? Um, I think that sometimes people will suffer a little bit in the fear of not knowing what's going to happen when they die. So they might be laying in a hospital bed and they might be very sick and feel like they know they're going, and they might get afraid and be be uncomfortable inside, because fear is always going to make us uncomfortable inside. But as far as the actual moving from here to there, it's, in my experience, perfect ease and flow. And I had a head injury when I was a child as well. And I went into a coma for a very short length of time. And in that state, I felt no pain either. I was aware. I was um, having an experience of, oh, there's my mom. My eyes were shut. So I was seeing her through the eyes of the soul again. We don't need our eyes to see. Um, and we don't need our ears to hear. We don't need any of our senses. Our soul can do it all without the use of our human senses. So that's important for people to understand, that our soul is so far beyond our humanness that our soul knows exactly what to do to help us be okay no matter what the situation is. No
Yeah.
matter what the situation.
Yeah. That's very comforting. I thank you for sharing that. So you had the experience on the other side where all of a sudden you have this thought that, what about my daughters? Whose thought was that? Was that your thought,
Yeah,
or was it a thought that came to you?
I have thought about that thought, and my understanding is it was a thought that came to me. So, what does that mean? I don't know for sure, but I think it means that I'm a piece of God, and there is a bigger, more expansive piece of God above, around. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
the people,
yeah. That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the light. So you mentioned that right after you had that thought, or about the same time you had that thought about what about your daughters, you saw the light. So what do you think the light was?
um, I think myself, I think the light was coming to take me over completely to the other side. So I don't in any way think I have seen everything that there is to see. I don't think that at all. And uh, I think probably it's a guess, right? But when the light comes to you, or you go to the light and you completely cross over, uh, then maybe that's where people often talk about seeing their ancestors and all that stuff. Maybe that's what that is. I don't know for sure. I'm
Okay.
guessing on that one.
Okay, that's okay. Well, I have a couple of questions about what you alluded to in your childhood about you understanding that you were spirit and you kept becoming more and more human as time progressed. So, did you have some special abilities and experiences where you saw things that we don't normally equate to as being a human experience?
Yeah, I had one experience where I was really in a high frequency, very young, I don't know, maybe 4 years old. And we were going to my favorite place on earth, the wishing well. I just
What's the
loved it there,
wishing
going to the
well?
wishing well. Yeah, it
Well,
was so it was such a wonderful experience because there were big trees and the sun could shine through on you, and a beautiful path that was surrounded by mossy ground, and you could all the senses were heightened for me. The smells, the sight, the hearing, the birds. And so you get to the wishing well and you have a couple of pennies that you're going to throw in and you're going to make a wish. And so I did that, and then I thought, I wonder what's down there. And my thinking and everything just faded away. And this image came up of it was native in nature, indigenous in nature. Um, I I still am not sure who I was in this scene, but there was a male all dressed in what we would see natives dressed in years and years ago. I could smell the fire. I was aware and could see a teepee. It was just a really ancient picture. And I don't know where it came from. And I was just there looking at it, mesmerized and thinking, who am I looking at this? Who am I that's looking at this? Because I knew that it wasn't me, the human. And for a 4 year old, it was quite an experience. And when I realized what was happening, it was kind of like having somebody go, boo. And I scared myself so bad. I turned around and shot back to the car and I said, I am never going back there again. Never. I told my family. I didn't understand it and had nobody that I could talk to about it. So it was frightening for me. And I made the statement, don't you ever show me anything like that again, because I don't understand it. And so there was nothing like that shown to me for a very long time.
Well,
I actually heard the answer. Okay, okay, we hear you.
that's really interesting. And I wonder if you were picking up on the energy of what that place used to be a long time ago, or were you perhaps connecting to a past life where maybe you were there and maybe that was why it was your draw to that place. I don't know. And so you had your near death experience, and then what happens after?
Well, I was a long time recovering from that. The head injury took probably 10 years to uh, what I feel is fully recover from. They told me you'll never recover and you'll be disabled forever and many things like that. And I always said in my head, no, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. And so I've healed fine. And coming out of that, I learned a lot from that too, because when I was confused in the brain from the head injury, I could be as clear and as concise and verbally understandable when I went into spiritual speaking from my soul. And so it confused the heck out of the doctors. I would say I'm confused, and then I would spew this um, very articulate explanation. And they would go, well, you're not confused. Yes, I am. So I learned a lot from that as well. The distinction between the two, the head and the heart, speaking from the head and speaking from the soul, is very clear to me, the difference. Um, and once I understood the near death experience, what that was, it was a game changer because then I knew that we are so much more than we realize we are. And it's hidden inside this body. And we're trapped by fears and we're trapped by negative energy. I mean, it just so much made sense, but I still had to learn a lot. I still had to listen to people and then I could go, oh, okay, now I understand them.
So you've connected to energy techniques that have helped you to shed some of your humanness, I'll use for lack of better terms. And it's helped you to create this life of a blissful state that you say that you're in now most of the time. So most other people watching are never going to have a near death experience. And one of the things I really love is that by watching these videos, people can pick up techniques and truths that near death experiencers have brought back with them or have uncovered as that experience has evolved over time. So, what would you share with the people watching with what they could use, they could do to use the energy to get to a place where they're feeling blissful?
Okay. Well, first I want to be honest. I am not always blissful.
Okay.
Being human is being human. Let's face it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's, I think it's important that people understand that just because you go out there and you come back does not mean that everything is going to be perfect because we're in a world where um, the density and the heaviness of being in a human body sometimes just comes in a wave and you have to get through it. So don't feel jealous of me. I'm still right there with you. Yesterday I had a really rough day. So today I'm fine again. But I think I just snap in and out of it much quicker now. And is that's kind and that's nice and that's heartwarming and makes me like myself to have moved in this direction for sure. Um, First of all, I think what people have the most difficulty with is really believing, you know, and you have to have faith. Because if you don't have faith and you don't have belief, then you're not going to see and feel what it is you're looking to see and feel. But you can see and feel the things that I saw and felt out there. You can do that here. And I know that from who I was as a child. And I, and the near death experience, of course. So if you can get yourself beyond the doubt, it goes a long way to helping you to see more and more. And the other thing that's important is to drop victimhood. And that's a tough one because we can feel so much like victims in this world, you know, as people can be very hard on one another. But I usually say to people, okay, the way that I live is with this thought in mind. I do not care what someone else thinks of me because what they are thinking of me is more what they're thinking of themselves than what they're thinking of me. What they're thinking of me is really not even part of the equation. So if they're looking at me and they're judging and they're saying terrible things, um, they need to take a quick look back at themselves because usually those judgments and those things that they're saying are things they think about themselves, not about me. And if they do think and believe the things that they say, or if they're saying terrible things about me, I don't care. Just don't care. They can do that. That can be their life. That can be their negativity. I'm not going to take it on in any way, shape, or form. And if people can do that, then you can't be hurt by hurt people because people who are hurting are going to hurt other people. And if you can start seeing that, then you can just kind of move away or drop away from being hurt by hurt people.
That's super powerful. I think that that's really helpful. So, what does somebody do when they're stuck in this victim mentality? What can they do to get out of that?
Well, the first thing I think that's really necessary is to forgive. And often people kind of go, well, how do you do that? I don't know how to do that. Like, what's the process? You just start to forgive. You feel a softness in your heart for them, knowing, I guess, that they were doing the best they knew at the time, or they are doing the best that they know how to do right now. And if you've been in their path and you've been hurt, um, try to forgive them. And I'm not saying that you're forgiving them personally for their behavior, because maybe what happened to you is a behavior that's truly not forgivable for you right now in your mind. But if you can forgive the person, knowing that and hoping that they'll learn to do better, um, then it stops you from poisoning your insides with hate for them.
Yeah, I
Because
think
as
that that's a big deal. It's a big
I
deal
do too.
for a couple of reasons. Number one, I always feel like forgiveness is really not about somebody else. I think people
Mm.
often mistake that the forgiveness is about the other person, but it isn't. The forgiveness is about you. It's about you allowing a release for holding on to energy that doesn't serve you, because energy, when it comes in, it has to go somewhere. And if you're holding on to it, it goes into a certain part of the body. There are actually studies right now that show that energy is held in different places. So if you have an injury in your left shoulder, for example, there are energy healers who take tining forks and they can put a tining fork that has an energy frequency, and the frequency on somebody with a shoulder injury will sound different than the frequency on somebody who doesn't have it. And if they can release that, then it goes away and the shoulder starts to feel better. But it's because energetically you were holding on to depression, or maybe if you've got a hip injury, you were holding on to anger. I mean, there's all kinds of maps now that people are creating that show that the energy injuries in your body are connected to thoughts you've had and things that you've just stored away. So when we think that we are punishing somebody else by being mean to them in our thoughts, so we think things about them because we're so angry about what happened, we think that we're punishing them because we're mad and we're expelling that. But what we're actually do is taking on things ourselves that will harm us in the long run. So negative thoughts really are whatever you're serving is actually bringing to you, not really being reflected to the
Yeah.
other person.
Oh, that what you have said is so important and so profound. And I believe it's the future of medicine. I really do. They're
There's a lot
finding
of
that they
evidence for
can,
that. Yeah.
yeah, they can heal Alzheimer's through sound technology, which actually cracks away the buildup on the brain, which causes Alzheimer's
Mm-hmm.
symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it makes so much sense to me though. And I have I've for a long time I've had Zoom calls and people get together and we go in there and we chat and uh they'll say in the middle of it, I feel things moving inside me. And for a long time I didn't know what that was. When I talk, my voice has a frequency and my presence has a frequency, and I move energy in people. And I didn't understand it for a long time, but I do now. I move energy, and now that I understand that, I can help them to clear it, which is wonderful. I it's just amazing. It is my healing technique that I'm learning to understand. But there's a lot to understand, let me tell you, and I will never get it all down. I know that, but I'm doing my best. I'm keeping up the best I can. And I actually went and had what's called an SRT. It's called a spirit removal technique done on me. I don't know. Have you heard of those?
I have not. Why don't you tell everybody what this is? This is fascinating.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. I had no idea what to expect, but I just keep looking and looking and looking. And it's not a looking that's driving me crazy, it's a looking that I love. So, this SRT, there are people who I didn't even see the person, I paid $70 and they did this what's called SRT. And I thought, well, probably won't feel anything. Oh, ho, ho, let me tell you. They sent me a report of what they felt they had removed. And I instead of SRT, I like to call it ERT. They call it spirit removal technique. I call it energy removal technique. Same thing, but people are just much less scared of energy removal technique. I don't care. I don't mind. They can call it spirit. I'm not scared of any of that anymore. None of it. I have learned to put in place boundaries, and I have come to understand that I held energy from years gone by, and I had this spirit removal technique done and thought, well, there you go. I don't feel much. Ho ho, I waited a few hours and suddenly I felt I felt so light. There was just so much removed, and I was uh so grounded and so present and so quiet inside that I would recommend anybody who's interested give it a whirl. And give it a whirl with somebody who knows what they're doing for sure. The group that I learned about from and had it done from, his name was Andy Potter.
Well, I can
Uh,
put this in the show notes for people so we can share it
yeah,
with them. I'll,
yeah,
I'll share an
because
experience I've never shared before.
give it a whirl with somebody who knows what they're doing for sure. The group that I learned about from and had it done from, his name was Andy Potter.
Well, I can
Uh,
put this in the show notes for people so we can share it
yeah,
with them.
Yeah,
I'll share an
because
experience I've never shared before about an energy release that happens to me. So when I've talked before on my show about these 5 MEO DMT journeys that I've done where I leave my body, and I've done 18 of these now over 6 years. And I think that maybe three of them, and the most recent one was the last time I did it on 11/11. I usually do these in synchronistic times, either on the winter solstice or at like an 11/11 or 2/2/2/2/2, those types of
oh, I
numbers.
love that.
Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
it was 11/11, and usually the intention is I'm going to go in and do two or three of these in a row because I have to travel a great distance and work with my shaman to do it. And in almost all of them, I have what they call breakthrough doses when you take this medicine in and then I leave my body and my body lays there and I have an experience as my soul. Well, this time I took a fairly large dose and I didn't leave my body, but I was laying there and I felt freezing cold and I felt like I was shivering, like I was shaking, but I knew because I was in my body still that visibly the person who was watching me, my shaman, couldn't see me moving at all, but it felt almost like I was dying, like I was freezing to death. And it was cold, and I knew what was happening. My body was taking everything that I had held on to, as I had just ended a relationship, and it was releasing everything from that my body was holding. And it wouldn't let me go and have a breakthrough dose and go to the other side until I did that first because you had to do clearing. So I'm not saying everybody run out and do a 5-MeO DMT journey. However, if it is something you're interested in, put some information in the show notes and you can email me. But we are going to be starting to do retreats here in Arizona for these. But I think that there are lots of what I'm saying, I guess, and the one reason I decided to share this story is because there are so many techniques that can be used. We've just talked about three. My
I
technique for
know.
releasing energy, yours for your spirit or your transformation, releasing energy, tining forks and sound healings that can release energy. People can also connect to their chakras and even do a meditation where they listen to somebody guiding them to release energy. Because I remember years ago talking to an energy healer, and she told me that I had this block in my throat chakra. And she said that there was somebody in my life that was making me feel like I couldn't speak my truth. And it was my husband at the time who I was in a relationship with. And I just, I had some things I needed to say, some things I needed to discuss, and I had closed off my energy center. And so she helped me clear and release that so you could begin to speak your truth. So there are so many places. And what I tell everybody is that when something resonates with you, you'll feel it in your heart and you'll feel, oh, that's a truth. Just like when you were a child, like that's a truth that resonates. If it doesn't resonate in your heart, discard it. Don't pay attention to it. Don't take it in. Either it's something that's never going to be for you, or you're not ready for it at that moment. Maybe you'll come back to it later. Maybe you'll never come back to it. But that's how you discern if something is going to be helpful for you or not. And I think that that's always the way that you don't want to just take anything at face value. You need to consult your own higher self, your own heart space, and ask, is this something that's meant for me before you go and rush off and do something?
Yeah, exactly. Because what works for me might not work for you. That is that's a hard thing for people to understand.
So you work with people, you coach people to help them, and I know that you have a Facebook group. So why don't you tell everybody how they can work with you if they would like to connect with you?
Yeah, my Facebook group is usually a good place to start, or on Facebook. Also, a lot of people just email me when they have seen an interview like this, and we work out whatever works. We decide maybe you want to just have one conversation and talk about the interview, and we can just meet on Zoom and do that. No, that's not a problem. I love doing that. And for people who want to learn, uh, go deeper learn more about healing themselves. I love to do that because we can ground center and align ourselves and clear energy. And I think everybody should attend to their energy every day and maybe a few times a day if you feel a little bit wonky from, we are exchanging energy all the time. And you can boundary up. And I think that's important. I didn't do that for a long time. I just took on energy and gave out energy. And, it was exhausting, absolutely exhausting. So there are ways to exist in this life that are a whole lot more peaceful, pleasant, and helpful instead of chaotic and miserable.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that there are a lot of, there's a technique that a lot of people use, especially empaths who do take on a lot of energy. When you take a shower, you can imagine as the water is washing over you that it's taking with it the energy, and you can ask for yourself, your body, you can ask your body, I mean, you think about all of your cells are alive and there's a sentience. Every one of your organs has its own organization and communication
Frequency.
and
Hmm.
frequency, absolutely. And so you can actually speak to your body and you can ask your body to help you release these different things. And if you have people maybe that you're trying to get to the place where you're forgiving, or sometimes we can't get away from the people that are causing us pain just because of the situations we're in, a job, maybe with somebody who isn't um, feeding your soul the way that you would like to be. You can also imagine when you're in the shower and you're washing everything away and you're clean, you can imagine mirrors all around your body, and you can ask that the energy be reflected away from you, like it bounces onto a mirror and bounces away for anything that you have, anybody that is bothering you too. So I think there's some really great techniques you can use to help protect your energy. And you mentioned that before when we were talking about protecting. Do you have any ways that you use to protect yourself?
Oh, yeah. And I do it every day just to make sure that there are no um, areas of weakness that energy can seep in, because the fact that we are energy from head to toe, and will always be this energy, and everybody else's energy, we can't help but be exchanging it. Uh,
So can you
so
share exactly what you, because not everybody does this, and for some people these are new. Can you share
mhm,
what you do and what you say, like what your technique is to protect yourself?
sure, I will. And I will also say to people that whatever you can think of that seems kind of grand and wonderful to do for yourself, for protection or for anything, do that and then think 100 times bigger because you're that much more capable. We just don't know it. All we have to do is ask, and we have a lot of help. And then think what it is we have for an intention and want to do. You want to be clear of energy, then ask for help to do that and believe that you can. So what I do is I you I literally envision putting a bubble around myself, white and golden light, and nothing can penetrate it. It's just a beautiful bubble around me. And then I go one step further and ask Archangel Michael to place a grid around me outside of that, which has no holes, no areas that can be seeped in with negative energy. Uh, because I don't mind some real high frequency, loving energy coming through in a positive way with good intention, but I don't want any negative energy coming through with an a negative intention. And that is what's happening. And that is what's changing. In our world today, we are heading into a time which has never been seen on earth, I believe. A time when the positive is outweighing the negative. We are learning uh, to say no to negative energies. We are learning to send them through fire and turn them back into love, whether they want it or not. If they're going to come near, that's what's going to happen to them from me, because I have held and harbored and been sick from holding and being um, unknowingly in an agreement and contracts where I allowed this energy to be inside me. And so now getting rid of it is so much better. And everybody on earth is going to be able to do this. The frequency is rising of the earth, and that's causing people to wake up everywhere, all over the place, and they don't know what the heck is happening. So it's an interesting time. I'm glad to be here. I love it.
I'm
Love
glad
it.
to be here too. Thank you so much for sharing those techniques with everybody. Now, you also wrote a book. So, what's the name of your book and where can we find it?
The book that I wrote several years ago, and it basically is just teaching people to not believe their thoughts. We have been so misguided by um, believing everything we're told by well-meaning parents, maybe, and well-meaning teachers and society. We've been told a lot of stuff that's just not true and doesn't apply to us and leads us down a road of not having very fulfilling lives. So my book helps people to see thinking a little differently, and that's often the door that opens an awakening to see and understand a different way of living your everyday experience.
That's
So
wonderful.
yeah, it's you could buy it on Amazon. That's mostly where people buy it. And
Okay.
it really kind of it follows an idea of what's called the three principles, and that's the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. So it's very simple read, short, and most people enjoy it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Jan, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it takes a lot to put yourself out here and be vulnerable. Thank you for sharing techniques that other people can use and for sharing your light and having a Facebook group in a way that people can connect with you. I really appreciate talking to you today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed our conversation too. Really.
And thank you, everybody, so much for watching.
Bye.
Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.